right now to just do a quick little updated version of Hunters in season 6. So I'm gonna swap the scenes over if you guys don't mind, because this I'm probably gonna be using for YouTube content section because I've had a lot of people asking me. Um, so I'm just gonna go ahead and break this down for you guys. This video is essentially meant for those of you who are like curious on like an updated guide for Hunters season 6 with the introduction of competitive play, and now that we've had multiple weeks of competitive play breakdown, I feel like it's much easier for me to kind of establish a better idea of where the hunters actually stand in the meta and who the true top 5 hunters are. So I'm going to start things off with talking about the one that I think has been in the spotlight, especially as of late, but Jing Wei. One of the primary reasons why Jing Wei kind of shot up in ranked pop, or I shouldn't, excuse me, I'm so used to saying ranked, but one of the reasons why she shot up in competitive popularity is because of the fact that she just has so much survivability in the laning phase. It's really tough for any jungler to gank her because a lot of junglers right now can't really afford to buy blink first item because there is a lot of I think strong CC locking that could take place, especially at competitive levels. So you won't tend to see blink too often as like the first relic on junglers. And without that, I mean, you pretty much lose all kill potential for the most part on Jing Wei. Unless a hunter is grossly out of position, there should never really be a reason for a Jing Wei to get caught out, especially not at like the highest level of play in like the SPL. Unless your team is like losing drastically somewhere else on the map, Jing Wei is just super reliable, and you can't rely on knockups to try and gank her. Knockup being one of the best CCs in the game, completely nullified by Jing Wei's agility, and everything else is pretty intense, as well as the fact that airstrike. Those are the two big reasons why Jing Wei is like super popular. She's just so safe. You can't really gank her. She's guaranteed to get her farm and make it to that like hyper farm late game stage. And in team fights, it can be really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to try and pinpoint where the carries are going to be at because Jing Wei, since she has so much self peel, she can position more aggressively, she can position really defensively. It's really up to the player preference, I feel, most of the time in that situation. And overall, the fact that she has inherent crit built into her kit thanks to explosive bolts, that's another reason why she can be kind of tough to handle because she does like have so much potential to turn and burn on anyone that like tries to gank her. But yeah, the main driving point home is just the fact she has so much late game survivability and early game survivability and mid game survivability. It just feels like she's really tough to tackle. So a lot of pros especially have been valuing Jingwei pretty highly because of this, because a lot of the engagements that take place in pro play don't tend to take place until like right around or right after that 20-minute mark, and that's like usually around the prime time for a Jingwei to really start taking off. Um, so she's going to be the first one that we list. I'm going to go over the ones that I believe to be the top 5 current ADCs right now in Season 6. After that, I think we got to go to the next obvious option, Chernabog. I had him on my original top 5 hunters of Season 6 list, mostly because of the fact that he has global impact. And Chernabog was actually a little bit of a sleeper for a while. I feel like we saw more Chernabog in minor league play than what we did in pro level play, but recently I think there's been a lot more value placed into Chernabog because of the fact that he has the global aspects to him with Living Nightmare, and it helps a lot when dealing with Jingwei because he also, like Chernabog, also has a ton of early game laning phase survivability because he has the Into Darkness where he can go inside of the wall and have the double dash away essentially. So Chernabog is definitely pretty valued for those two big reasons alone: global rotations, survivability. But he also just chunks. Like I think that he is probably one of the craziest hunters in terms of potential or outplay potential, since you have the crystallized curses and the vicious barrage to work with, plus the reset value off of the living nightmare ultimate. And of course, damage mitigation buff's always a nice thing to have with Living Nightmare as well. So all in all, Chernabog is essentially the total package. His clear can be a little bit in the early game. Personally, I find it better to clear when you level the Vicious Barrage first. That's not to say max out leveling it, but just at level 1, I like to get his second ability first, and then I like to get the dash and then the crystallized curses by level 3, And then by then, level 4 and onwards, it gets pretty easy to clear because you start maxing out that crystallized curses, and when combined with the vicious barrage, you get your full lane clear potential. But I definitely think that Chernabog and Jing Wei are top tier hunters right now, or at least they're going to be the first two that I have on my list because they both have a lot of team fighting potential, and they both have that late game hyper carry aspect, which is super valued right now for a lot of hunters. And after that, I mean, I could go for the obvious. I don't want to include. I want to like just take a second to clarify. I'm not including magical ADCs intentionally with this top hunters list because I want this to be a list geared more towards the top 5 physical hunters in season 6. Because if I were to include magical hunters, I think it's kind of obvious. Freya and Chronos would definitely work their way into the top 5, but I I want this to be specifically for like physical hunters. If I was doing one for like overall hunters, I think Freya and Chronos are definitely still in the top 5 hunters overall. But like I said, since I'm doing physical, we're just gonna cover 3 through 5 from this point forward. Um, so the third hunter that I want to talk about is Hachiman. And the reason why Hachiman is number 3 on the list is because, like Jing Wei and like Chernabog, he does have a lot of really strong lane survivability. Because of that mounted archery, it's a really fast getaway, usually able to create enough space to get away. And not only that, but Hachiman also has top tier boxing potential, I think in the laning phase right now. He is a pretty easy time of poking out other hunters by utilizing that Heavenly Banner. He can be really restricting around buffs, and probably one of the more ideal hunters if you're somebody who prefers to look for early game buff invades. Hachiman has a lot of push power potential right now against the minion waves, and on top of that, like I said, his Heavenly Banner is also really good for buff secure because it does do a decent chunk of damage, and it has such a big area effect that not many duo lanes are going to want to try and interfere with you when you're looking for that buff confirmation. Eagle Eye is also an incredibly strong asset on Hachiman. Even though it can't impact towers, Eagle Eye is really great at preventing the like junglers and stuff who want to be buying Blink. It's a lot easier for Hachiman to kind of interfere with that with Eagle Eye since he has that long range auto attack to put them into combat. I think also with Odie bow builds being so popularized right now, Hachiman is another hunter since he's attack speed based, and he goes kind of with the same pattern as Jing Wei and Chernabog. These are all hunters that are auto attack oriented for the most part. Chernabog, you can go a little bit hybrid between pen build with a mace tree or attack speed and stuff, but no matter which way you look at it, the majority of these hunters rely on auto attacks for their objective shred, and Hachiman also provides a lot of objective shred, which is another reason why he's been such a popular hunter in Season 6. Heavenly Banner being able to assist his teammates so well. He is paired best with Fafnir. I think that goes without saying. You guys have probably seen a ton of SPL sets where it's that Hachiman, Chronos, Fafnir combination. And it's because Hachiman does what no other hunter can do, and that's stem the entire team around him for objective control. And the fact that mounted archery can also be used as an initiation tool is another reason why Hachiman can be seen as such a potent hunter in the duo lane currently in season 6. So those, oh yeah, and Naijutsu. I mean, I feel like I don't really need to say much on this, but it's a fairly reliable escape. The fact that you have the potential to stun as well and keep a CC chain going with your team and engagements, as I think that's about anything what anybody would ask for in a team fight. So those are gonna be my top 3 for right now. After that, I honestly think that Ullr is back into my top 5. The reason why I say this is because with the recent Xbalanque nerf, I think that it's going to open up the doorway for hunters like Ullr to come back into the meta. One big reason why I think a lot of pro players shied away from Ullr in the duo lane, they've been moving him, mostly towards that mid lane, is because Ullr is probably one of the easiest hunters to gank in duo lane. He's got, a decent escape with his leap if you can make it over a wall, but oftentimes a lot of the more popular junglers right now, looking at like Pele, Arachne, Ratatosker, there's a lot of different ones. A lot of different assassins, I think, Erlong that have a fairly easy time of controlling Ullr in that laning phase. And at competitive levels of play, especially, if you're caught out in your bow stance, you're probably going to die before you even have a chance to switch stances. So I still think that despite the risk, he's not as risky anymore because Shibalanke isn't able to be as controlling in competitive levels of play since the stun has been removed off of the ultimate. So gods like Ullr that are designed to be early game lane bullies have potential now, I think, to try and careen the duo lane heavily into their favor by just applying non-stop pressure in the lane. Um, you've obviously got to be careful with your positioning. You probably want deep wards on your side of the map, but if your intention is solely to confirm buffs and look to like out farm your opponent that through, high initiation, then Ullr is definitely your go-to. He has really strong buff secure, and I think that his early to mid game potential is one of the main reasons why I have to list him in this updated list of top 5 hunters. I just think that Ullr, especially when paired in a double hunter composition, can be incredibly deadly. You just got to be smart about how you play that mid to late game because he does fall off a little bit after the mid game aspect, but most of the time you're able to like generate a lead so big you're going to be closing your game out before it gets to that stage. So definitely one to keep an eye on and to look out for. And like I said, he's someone that I predict to see a lot of at like MSI. I think that's where we'll probably see a lot more Ullr is the upcoming land from players. And out of those 4 hunters, I think the 5th hunter can honestly beat Cernunnos. I really do believe that even though the whole hammer prioritization for hunters kind of fell off, I definitely still think that Cernunnos' damage alone is one of the primary reasons why Cernunnos is probably gonna start slowly creeping his way back into the meta. And he has a fairly solid matchup against a lot of the hunters that I just stated. The Jing Wei, the Hachiman, Ullr to a degree, I think, and I just and the Chernabog. I think that he is a fairly strong matchup into all of those hunters, and it's fair to put him into a duo lane against any of those hunters because you're gonna have decent poke potential with Bramble Blast. That's for starters. Um, you have built-in lifesteal thanks to your ability to switch through the stances, and if you want to just chill in spring stance the entire time, you can. But I also feel like Chernabog is one of the few hunters right now where you can truly be as flexible as you want to be with his itemization choices, and that you can actually buy a Blackthorn hammer on Chernabog, or excuse me, on Cernunnos, and it won't really hinder your ability to like deal damage. And that's thanks to the fact that he has such an incredible passive where all you got to do is get people into melee range and you're going to deal a ton of damage. Like 25% of your basic attack damage. That is pretty nuts if you can get somebody into boxing range. And with the way that a lot of these, especially in competitive play compositions have been going, I am definitely expecting to see a lot more Cernunnos. I think the Wild Hunt is an excellent tool to help create space in not only the jungle around objective play, but even underneath towers when you're trying to force siege towers. Wild Hunt can really just be used to back everybody up and away from the objective. It's purely a utility ult in my mind. I think that if you're having to resort to using the Wild Hunt as an escape tool, you're probably somewhere you shouldn't be already. But all in all, I think that Cernunnos has really solid pressure in the early, mid, and late game, depending on how you itemize. That I think it's fair to say he's also another hunter I'm expecting to see a little bit more of at MSI. I think as well, even though you've got my top 5, I'll reiterate as well for anybody who might have missed the first couple. Jing Wei, Chernabog, Hachiman, I lost eyes, Cernunnos, and Ullr. I lost eyes. But those are going to be my current updated top 5 hunters of Season 6. I'm expecting Cernunnos and Ullr to be ones that poke their heads up more so at MSI. When it comes to land metas, things are always bound to get a little bit crazy. Some other hunters that I've been keeping an eye out for are definitely, I think, Artemis and AMC were tough choices not to include into the top 5. I was really struggling between Amuz and Cobb over Cernunnos or Ullr, but I'm not completely sold on AMC's survivability being top tier like the other 5 I mentioned. I think that the other 5 hunters I mentioned have better survivability in the laning phase. But Amuz and Cobb would probably be tied for that 5th place spot in my mind. I definitely think that Amuzin has a lot of viability right now. He deals a ton of damage. We've already been seeing a lot of him in the mid lane, and personally, I personally think that he is much better suited for mid. But I think it really just all depends on what kind of composition your team has. If you have a team with a lot of lockdown, a lot of heavy crowd control, and a lot of peel, then you're probably safe to take AMC into the duo lane. AMC also has a pretty strong matchup against all those other hunters I mentioned. Honestly, AMC might be the best boxing hunter in general in Smite. I think the hardest matchup for him would probably be like a Scotty or something, but he's definitely good. It can kind of go either way between Namuz and Cobb and Ullr as well. I think it really just depends on who gets the jump start on the other there, but I definitely think that those would probably be all of the hunters that I would want to qualify for my current top 5. But we are definitely in a meta of Smite right now where I feel like duo lane is more flexible than ever before. But we're probably going to continue to see a lot of prevalence towards Chronos and Freya. The main reason why I don't think that we'll see. Honestly, I think teams are going to start banning those gods a lot more often. I think that they are top tier bans currently, but mostly towards competitive levels of play is where we'll probably start to see more stuff like that. But those are all the hunters that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little updated season 6 hunter videos, and you can kind of let me know your thoughts below in the comments. Thank you guys. Have a good one.